Good morning to you. Mr. Macmillan, the Foreign Secretary.
Despite Barbara Mandel having read the news on ITV in 1955 and Nan Winton on the BBC in 1960, newsreading was a profession dominated by men.
Sarawak government said it will stay in Malaysia.
But by the 70s, a couple of new recruits were set to change the face of television news forever.
And tonight's main news again.
Good evening.
In 1975, when Angela Rippon landed a permanent job presenting BBC's flagship 9 o'clock news, it caused a sensation.
When I started reading the news on BBC One, the main bulletins, because there were so few channels, and certainly I was the first woman journalist to read the news on television, that you got an awful lot of attention from the press. I mean, the press did go silly about it, really. There was a kind of media madness about it. I was just doing my job.
Britain's ambassador to Spain is expected to see the Foreign Secretary in Blackpool this evening.
But the media, of course, saw it in quite a different way because it was breaking through a glass ceiling that no one had done since Nan Winton. So it made headline news.
But over on ITV, it seemed Angela Rippon soon had competition.
750,000 trunk calls are made through the telephone system in the northwest every day.
Anna Ford started her career as a researcher at Granada Television before joining ITN in February 1978.
Good evening. The new Miss World has resigned only 17 hours after she was crowned.
Anna Ford arrived and she really took the place by storm. She was gorgeous on air. And I fell in love with her and I had a little scene with her. But otherwise, you know, I nearly got engaged to her. Well, I did get engaged to her, but I didn't get married to her.
I'm not at all sure that in those days people didn't watch the news just to see the presenter.
At home, the management...
And certainly when Angela and when Anna came on board, you know, there was that huge curiosity.
One of the 4 elderly people poisoned by a tin of salmon.
Angela Rippon and Anna Ford weren't just reading the news, they were the news.
Wife, brother and sister-in-law are still...
Anna Ford, of course, was the first woman then to read the news for ITV after I'd been reading it for just a few months for the BBC. And this gave certainly the tabloid press a field day. They talked about the way we dressed, the way we looked, the way we presented, because immediately we were challenging each other. We were rivals. All a load of nonsense, of course. I picked up the phone one day and just rang her at ITN, and we met in a curry house in Ealing and had a good laugh about it all, and remained good friends ever since.
The impact that Anna and Angela had was absolutely enormous. And we're talking of perhaps of 14 million viewers watching the news every evening, which is extraordinary by today's standards.
I'm actually delighted to receive this award. It is a great honour.
I think the brilliant thing is that they were both really good journalists.
And it's from his back garden here at Bath.
Both really brilliant at delivering the news in a way that you could understand it, in the way that it was totally clear. They were utterly credible.
Can you envisage a time when you could actually make new life?
I found them very inspiring.
There had been no dominant women really on the television at all. They both had a presence and, of course, they kind of had invaded a male world, and it made a very big difference.
Newsreaders were becoming celebrities, and it was Angela herself who made the journey complete on Christmas Day 1976 in what would be a defining moment in the history of the newsreader.
I think when Angela Rippon appeared on Morecambe and Wise, it was an extraordinary deal, because I think in those days the news was more formal than it is now.
Their Christmas show was the one show everybody watched. They started a tradition of having someone do something completely off the wall and out of character at the end of their Christmas show. So when I got a phone call from Ernest Maxim, who was their producer and director, he said, the boys would like you to be in the programme. And so I think my immediate reaction was shock. He said they'd like you to sing, and I said I can't sing, but I can dance a bit because I studied classical ballet till I was nearly 17.
There may be trouble ahead, but while there's moonlight and music and love...
She appeared at the news desk, and if you remember, it kind of split apart.
Let's face the music and
And out she came with high kick and everything. It was like the Queen had done that. And we'd never seen her except from the waist up. Wow. I loved it. Loved it.
Gee, you look good to me!
26 million people saw Angela Rippon reveal her legs from behind the desk on Morecambe and Wise. Overnight, the newsreader had become a sex symbol.
What are we gonna do about him?
The fact that Angela Rippon was a serious newsreader made her appearance on the Morecambe and Wise show all the more astounding. And that was probably one of the best light entertainment moments there will ever be.
I still get people talking to me about it because it made such an impact.
News at 10 tries quintessentials of tomorrow's news.
Angela Rippon may have brought entertainment to newsreading, but for the most part, journalists have tried to stick to the script.
Autocue.
Here is the camera with the autocue, and you see only 2 or 3 words a line. Why would that be? Because your pupils go like that. If you do sort of 10 words a line, you go, and you'd feel giddy at home.
Over the decades, the autocue has allowed the newsreader to read the script while directly addressing the viewers. It's become the newsreader's best friend, but sometimes the relationship has been a difficult one.
Autocue is a problem if it ever stops, because quickly looking down, trying to find where you are on the bit of paper is not easy. Founded his magazine to the New Yorker-born man, founded his magazine. Occasionally I have actually said, I'm afraid we've got a problem with the autocue. Now there I have a problem because unfortunately the autocue, which is a rare thing that we ever refer to, has broken down. But of course they're not really supposed to know you've got an autocue, so it's a difficult one.
Well now, Peter Sissons and VT80, you can solve some of these problems for us.
Well, I can't at the moment, Alistair. I've got to tell you that the machine is locked up on me. Things can go wrong all the time, and on Autocue, you're always aware of banana skin expressions. One newscaster at ITN once famously, notoriously, when the Channel Tunnel first opened, referred to cross-flannel cherries.
The first one, which I thought nobody would notice when I announced to the Sunday viewing public that the next news would be at 5 to 6.
That's all from ITN for now. The next news will be at 5 to 6 this evening, and the late news will be at 8:10.
And I came out into the newsroom and I thought, I don't think anybody noticed. And I said to the news editor, you didn't hear that, did you? Did I say 6 or did I say 6? I'm sure I said 6. And they went, no, you said 6. And we've already had the News of the World, the Daily Star, and the Sunday Sport on the phone wanting a quote. I was like, oh.
The next news will be at 5 to 6 this evening, and the late news will be at 8:10.
If things fall apart, you've got to say, do you know what's happened? Things have fallen apart. It's no good pretending they haven't, because the viewer knows better than you do.
Alongside the autocue, the Airpiece has linked generations of newsreaders to the control room and a constant stream of countdowns and last-minute changes to stories.
Mark, Mary, rewrite on page 90 coming down.
The result can be a baffling mix of behind-the-scenes instructions and conversations.
I think we'll talk about robots instead, because they're also designing we've just moved into new premises on the outskirts of Sydney. I believe we're going to have a film about that.
No, you're not.
Instead. Well, we're not. We're going to talk about that.
What's that on BT? Sorry, Jeremy.
It's no surprise that over 60 years of presenting live on television,
What is going on here?
newsreaders have come to expect the unexpected.
Flooding is still causing problems in Derbyshire, Leicestershire and the Severn Valley, where thousands of acres are underwater. Sorry about that.
We can cross now, I believe, to Johannesburg. No, indeed, we've now going to say goodnight.
My most difficult moments normally is when somebody next to me is making a mistake, and if you tell Katie Derham that, I'll go bonkers. But as she told you about Fat Sue, that was a slightly difficult moment.
There was an interview I did with a delightful lady called Sue, who had been the model for Lucian Freud in a beautiful portrait. She was known by friends and family as Big Sue. Trouble was, the researcher that day had told me that, no, affectionately everybody calls her Fat Sue.
When a job centre worker posed naked for a life-size painting for renowned artist Lucian Freud, Fat Sue, as she's affectionately known, said he got value for money because there was a lot of flesh. Does it feel rather exciting to have been part of this extraordinary art world event?
Yes, it's rather nice, but I'm not really happy when you call me Fat Sue, because that's not my name, and I'd appreciate it if you didn't call me that, thank you.
Well, I absolutely apologise unreservedly. We thought it was an affectionate nickname given by you, but if not, then absolutely you're right to pick us up. Now, in fact, I just apologised and we moved on and it was fine. But again, the papers pick it up, it's clipped up, it's put on YouTube. So I suppose the lesson from unintentionally offending Sue would be always do your own research. Sue Tilley, thank you very much for talking to us this lunchtime.
Over 6 decades, newsreaders have delivered the headlines of history in the making.
The first black American president, Barack Obama, will walk into the building behind me.
But in the late 1980s, they were set to make the front pages themselves when an unprecedented event unfolded.
The 6 o'clock news became the most widely watched television news programme in Britain.
The 6 o'clock news from the BBC with Sue Lawley and Nicholas Witchell.
Good evening. The headlines at 6 o'clock.
Sue Lawley was the main presenter. I was there alongside her. And in those days, in the 1980s, you could still command very considerable audiences for television news. And in the early evening, the 6 o'clock news did precisely that.
On the 23rd of May, 1988, Sue Lawley and Nicholas Witchell were faced with a challenge they could never have expected when protesters for lesbian and gay rights avoided security and invaded the BBC studios.
Good evening. The headlines at 6 o'clock. In the House of Lords, a vote is taking place now.
They came bursting in on the dot of 6 o'clock.
Tory rebels.
Sue kept reading. One of them came round the desk, chained herself to it. I first of all tried to drag her off the set and then realised that she had handcuffed herself to the desk. So, well, you know, what's a chap to do? I sat on her.
To the poll tax. Tory rebel.
I tried to put my hand over her mouth to restrain the sort of shouts and yells that she was emitting.
And repairing the roads. Why the cones signal a lot more chaos this summer.
There was also one protester in the gallery, which not a lot of people know.
Peers have been discussing the community charge or poll tax.
And so thanks to our director Nick Davis in the gallery and Sue continuing to read, the show did go on, apart from a few camera wobbles, and as Sue I think memorably said, we have been somewhat invaded.
And I do apologise if you're hearing quite a lot of noise in this studio at the moment. I'm afraid that we have rather been invaded by some people who we hope to be removing very shortly. In the meantime, if you can possibly ignore the background news, we'll bring the news as best we can.
That night, it was the news that made the news.
Led away, the women repeated their protest.
Protesting about rights for lesbian and gay people.
Sue Lawley, who described the studio invasion as a very alarming experience, was praised by her bosses for the way she managed to continue reading the news.
She was very cool.
Professional, yeah.
The man was not particularly professional.
I've been